Mayor of Kingstown Season 4 is here, and before I get into it, I wanted to do a recap of the first three seasons. And watching Season 3 was interesting because there were so many parallels to some of the earlier stuff. I kind of had details kind of mixed up in my head, so I'm glad I went back. You can see my videos and recaps of Season 1 and 2. I'll put links in the description there for you on those. And Season 3 really kicks off with a bang. Quite literally, there's a bombing at the funeral. If you remember at the end of Season 2, you weren't quite sure if Mike and Kyle's mom, Miriam, played by Diane Weiss, was going to make it or not. There was the big Milo shootout at the end. Kyle's bullet went through and struck their mom. Well, she did pass, and then there's a funeral there. And you basically have news now, Kyle's baby, Tracy's baby's coming. There's a lot more focus on who's going to take control from the Aryan Brotherhood point of view. So we have introduction of Callahan in the season. He's sort of like the big bad on the inside, the shot caller, if you will. And then you have Constantine, who replaces Milo. Now, we assume Milo's dead because if you remember at the end of the season, there was a big explosion with the boat. But we also know if you watch if you have your captions on, there's a quick phone call with Tatiana. That's actually Milo's voice, so he's actually survived. He's sort of out there. But the characters don't know that until we're at least about 2/3 of the way through. We'll get to that in a minute. But all of this is orchestrating a new Milo in the name of Constantine. And he kind of partners with the AB group to basically be the, I don't say antagonist, if you will. They take on Bunny and they take on Mike. All that's what plays out. The other thing that kind of hangs out there, you can see Iris in the top right, where she just kind of doesn't want to follow any of the rules. Mike gets her into witness protection, but of course she just runs away. She resists arrest when she's pulled over later in the season. She's just really an awful, awful person. I know there's still some back and forth about why are you doing this, what is she to you kind of thing. And there is sort of that, I just wanted to get her away from Kingstown. But reality is, she just keeps doing stuff to herself. Like, I don't know what to say. And then in the bottom right there, you see Kareem. Kareem takes over as warden, but he's got so much PTSD and unresolved issues from season 1. Big chip on his shoulder. Really a lot to sort of kind of melt down for him there, where they kind of come after him near the end of the season. There's also a rookie guard in this season that's introduced that Bunny has planted there to kind of keep tabs on anything. And he's basically playing the warden games. Like, so basically that's kind of the shenanigans that are going to take place. And I don't know that I really totally liked some of the elements in season 3, but one thing I did like was the fact that Bunny and Mike are really like at blows. They really are like separate because all this chaos is breaking out. Mike can't get his handle on it fast enough, and they end up killing Bunny's cousin. And the Russians are just out of control. The Russians don't follow any of sort of like the Kingstown rules, the Kingstown protocols, how the mayor kind of keeps the peace. They break so everything kind of comes crashing down in season 3. Obviously, I mentioned Bunny's cousin gets killed. That turns Mike against Bunny. And then when Kyle's wife goes back to work, Tracy, you have her little introduction of her story here a little bit, which kind of throws some gasoline on the fringes in that she's basically uncovering the fact that even in the women's prison, because the prison system is just so bad, so corrupt, everything about this show is supposed to be highlighting the amount of just absolute chaos sort of like in the criminal reform system and how bad everything is. It's no different in the women's prison. She's under sexual assault cases, things like that. And one of the guards actually comes at her. And that kind of comes to the end here where you end up with basically like this, serial killer arc with Ian. Ian ends up taking this guy to kind of scare the SWAT guys, turning on Robert from the previous seasons. That goes sideways. So all this kind of bubbles along. I don't know that I'm rooting for anyone. You don't really feel sympathy for Mike either because of how bad season 2 went. Because it's a lot of season 2 was his fault, and here it's just like no one's playing by any rules. No one's going to follow any. Constantine's just a drug addict, nasty version of Milo. You have Bunny and Mike at odds, which isn't really interesting. I think that there's some good moments, but then there's like a checkout episode. There's a whole episode where I feel like they had to go back. Maybe this is why Tracy's story and stuff kind of got added in, because it feels like it could all be deleted. The season was probably like maybe 8 episodes long, and they said we need 10. So they add this like Santa Jesus episode where Mike just checks out, just goes to the bar, gets drunk, does nothing, sits on a bench. Meanwhile, all these other things are happening, like Bunny getting out of prison and stuff. And all of this just culminates with Milo being at the end. Like, it's all about getting back to Milo. So the finale of season 2 and season 3 are so similar in some ways that I had them really confused in my head. So it actually comes to a head this time with Constantine involved. And then, of course, there's the Iris situation. Will she get away? Will she not? How will that play out? Will Mike take care of Milo himself? Will Milo actually die this time? So that's kind of how season 3 kind of wraps. Now, the one thing that is orchestrated at the end of season 3 is this big conflict with Bunny as sort of like bait in a lot of ways to get the Russians in this big shootout on this bridge. Obviously, the KPD is there as well, and you end up with this massive showdown on this bridge. Kyle's now moves over to SWAT, so he and Robert are there taking out bad guys when Robert just starts losing his crap because some dude is in his car with his kid and won't put down the gun fast enough. So he ends up shooting one civilian, and then as he starts to shoot this guy, Kyle actually shoots Robert. So that's how the season ends. And I wish they'd kind of wrapped it a little bit faster and neater, because I kind of felt like this was going to be the series finale. I really felt like this was just going to be it. Milo's gone, Iris is gone, Hakeem is gone. It pretty much wraps most things up. Kyle replaces Mike in the system. Now he's going to have to go to jail. That's pretty much how things were shaking out. So the fact that I heard it was season 4, I was actually quite surprised. So it doesn't lend itself to giving us a lot of interesting. I don't even know that I was excited about watching season 4 because I don't know that I cared a lot about, well, Kyle's in jail now, so what's going to happen there? What's going to happen with the orchestrate a new big bad, right? Because we've killed off all the Russians. The Russians are completely gone now. So how are we going to do that? So, you know, I'll get into season 4 and how it's kind of picked up the pieces, but it really felt like it could have been a series finale. That's how season 3 wrapped. I like season 3, I think, better than season 2 because of the Bunny versus Mike stuff. It's just such good drama. It isn't what I like because I like the characters and how they're interacting together. I enjoy it better having Bunny sort of like be a criminal protagonist in this show because it was really the best part of it. It is the fact that it was an interesting dynamic with the characters and how they can work through it, test the barriers and bonds, trust, you know, everything kind of just gets torn down and then built back up to some degree to move forward. So all in all, still very solid. The show is obviously way underrated. Critics hate on this show. I think it's because it is so dark and pessimistic. It doesn't shine any redemptive elements of society when it comes to criminal reform. Everything from police to the prisons to the nurses and the prison system to people on the outside, inside, sideways. It doesn't matter. Everything about it is rough and dark. Everyone's breaking the laws, covering up crimes. Ian and Mike have murdered regularly, yet Robert is somehow being thrown under the bus because he's also a psychopath killing someone. There's just so much stuff going on that isn't what I think the mass appeal would be for some critics, but I find it incredibly interesting and I do enjoy it. So that's my take on it. I'll be moving on to season 4. Love to hear from you guys if you have some elements that you like from the season, what you like, characters you like or don't like. Leave those comments for me as well. So thanks very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. I am Pops.
Adios, amigo.